Hi, this is Cathy for Trans by Deaf, and this week we are discussing the question of during the period before transition, what role did cross-dressing play? To me, I would answer this as being a very important role. Now, my history is much different than many of the other hosts. I asked my mother when I was 11 or 12 if I could transition to become a woman, and I was taken to a psychologist. When I tried to transition in college in 1972 and 73 and was totally crushed by the people who were around me, I then had to go back to being a man. The only way in which I have survived the period between 1973 and 2009 was by the practice of cross-dressing. I'm not really sure that I would define it as cross-dressing so much as saying whenever it was possible, I dressed up as a woman and lived as a woman. Whenever it required me to be a man, or whenever I had to be a man, I dressed up as a man and lived in that mode. And I went back and forth between the two over that period between 1973 and 2009. Most every day I would dress up as a man and live and do the things which I had to do. And when it came evening or when it came the appropriate time, I would put on my female clothes and be a woman, and I would feel much, much better. To me, that was a very long, very gloomy time in my life because I could not really be the person that I wanted to be. I always had to be this man which had a very dominant male role and acted in a certain way and had certain expectations. If you were to go to my closet, you would find, or you would go into my photo album and look at the pictures of Cathy from the time that I had a camera that would take pictures of myself back in the mid-70s or early 70s. You would see that I had a fairly extensive wardrobe of women's clothes, and I was always dressing up and keeping up with the fashions that were there. And the only way that I could ward off the intense depression which was associated with being a man trapped in a woman trapped in a man's body was by putting on women's clothes and becoming a woman for a period of time to relieve that frustration and that problem and that depression that was associated with it. So when you ask me what role did cross-dressing play, the going back and forth from male to female and female back to male, oftentimes 2 and 3 times in a day, relieved the depression and removed the option or removed the possibility of suicide and the other things that were associated with that depression. The way in which I dealt with depression during those many, many years was through cross-dressing. Now, as far as leading in the 2 or 3 years before I transitioned in 2010 full-time, in those years I just became dressing more and more as a woman until finally I looked at my wife one day and I said, I just can't live as a man anymore. I'm going to go full-time and solve this problem permanently. So that's my feeling on cross-dressing. I'm not sure that you would really consider what I was doing as cross-dressing, but it certainly was going from presenting as a man to a woman every day to relieve the depression. Well, that's my take on this week's question. I appreciate you joining me. If you have a question, please leave it in the box below. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And I hope to see you again next week. Bye.